At 30,000 feet in the air, you are completely at the mercy of the crew. For one black woman, a quiet moment of reflection was shattered by a cold, deliberate act of humiliation. The flight attendant saw a passenger she thought she could disrespect, without consequence, a simple mistake in a cabin full of strangers. But this was no simple mistake. She had no idea that her target was connected to the most powerful person in the entire airline. What the flight attendant didn't know was that this single act of malice was about to trigger a chain of events. So powerful, it would end the careers of her entire crew before the plane even landed. Her name was Dr. Alani Ross, a brilliant pediatric cardiologist returning from a grueling but successful medical conference in Geneva. For her, the first-class cabin wasn't a luxury, it was a necessity, a quiet sanctuary to decompress before returning to a life of saving children's hearts. She settled into the soft leather of Seat 2B, the low hum of the engines a welcome lullaby. She closed her eyes, thinking only of landing, of the familiar comfort of home, and of the arms of her husband waiting for her. She was a woman who moved through the world with grace and accomplishment, accustomed to respect earned through years of dedication. But from the moment the lead flight attendant began her service, a subtle chill entered Alani's sanctuary. It was in the way the attendant's warm, professional smile seemed to freeze and tighten ever so slightly when her eyes met Alani's. It was in the clipped, almost dismissive nod she received, a stark contrast to the cheerful conversations held with the passengers in the rows ahead. Alani, perceptive and accustomed to reading subtle cues, felt a familiar, unwelcome knot form in her stomach. She tried to dismiss it as travel fatigue, a simple misunderstanding, but she couldn't shake the feeling that she was being watched, judged, and singled out before a single word was even exchanged. The feeling of being watched intensified as the meal service began. The lead attendant, a woman named Karen, moved with a practiced, almost theatrical warmth, offering smiles and pleasantries to the passengers around Alani. But each time she passed Seat 2B, the warmth vanished, replaced by a mask of cold indifference. When she finally arrived at Alani's row, she didn't make eye contact, her voice flat as she took the order. A small thing, easily denied, but it was a clear and deliberate message. You are not welcome here. Later. Alani felt a chill and politely signaled for a blanket. Another attendant nodded, but 20 minutes passed. The cabin grew colder, but the blanket never came. She saw the same attendant deliver pillows and blankets to others, laughing softly with a passenger just a row behind her. Alani wasn't just being ignored, she was being erased, made to feel insignificant in a space she had paid to occupy. The humiliation was a quiet, creeping thing, designed to be felt but difficult to prove. The final act of aggression was as swift as it was shocking. Karen was making a final pass through the cabin, collecting glasses onto a silver tray. As she approached Alani's seat, the plane was perfectly steady. There was no turbulence, no sudden jolt. Yet the attendant's hand seemed to falter with an almost imperceptible, deliberate tilt. A full glass of dark, cold cranberry juice cascaded directly onto Alani's cream-colored silk blouse and lap. The icy shock of the liquid was followed by a collective gasp from the passengers who witnessed it. Karen offered no real apology. Just a thin, insincere smile and a clipped, "Oh, clumsy me," before handing Alani a single useless paper napkin. She didn't offer to help, didn't bring towels, didn't show an ounce of genuine remorse. Instead, she turned away, sharing a nearly invisible, knowing smirk with another crew member standing by the galley. In that moment, the entire crew became complicit. They saw the act, saw the stain spreading across Alani's chest like a wound, saw her quiet, dignified shock, and they did nothing. Alani sat there, drenched and humiliated under the curious and pitying stares of strangers. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't demand to see a supervisor. Her years as a surgeon had taught her a profound and unshakable composure under pressure. She simply took a deep breath, closed her eyes for a moment, and let the cold fury crystallize into quiet, unbending resolve. Then, ignoring the useless napkin in her hand, she reached into her bag and slowly, deliberately, pulled out her phone. With a steady hand, Alani typed a single, concise text message. There was no emotion in it, no anger, just a clear, factual account of what had just happened. She described the deliberate chill, the ignored requests, and the final act of humiliation with the juice. She included the flight number, her seat number, and the name on the lead attendant's badge. Then she hit send. The recipient was a simple contact in her phone. My love. Across the Atlantic, in a sleek top-floor office overlooking a runway, a phone buzzed. Damian Ross, a man known in the aviation industry for his ruthless efficiency and legendary attention to detail, glanced at the message from his wife, Alani. His expression, usually calm and analytical, darkened instantly. The quiet hum of his office was shattered by the cold fury in his eyes. He didn't text back. He didn't need to. He simply swiveled in his chair and pressed a single button on his intercom dot. His voice was dangerously quiet, yet it carried an authority that made his executive assistant freeze. He gave 3 simple commands. First, get the head of fleet operations on the line immediately. Second, get the head of human resources. Third, have a private ground crew meet Flight 721 at the gate in New York, with termination papers for every single member of the cabin crew. There was no hesitation, no request. For more details, his wife's word was enough. The message was clear. An attack on her was an attack on him, and by extension, an attack on the entire airline he had built from the ground up. Back on the plane, the crew shared their last laugh in the galley, completely oblivious. They were preparing for landing, confident in their petty victory. Karen, the lead attendant, felt a surge of satisfaction, believing she had put a passenger she deemed unworthy in her place. She had no idea that a single text message, traveling silently through the atmosphere, had just sealed her fate and the fate of her entire crew. The plane began its final descent, flying directly into a storm that none of them could see coming. As the wheels of the aircraft touched down on the tarmac at JFK, the fasten seatbelt sign was the only thing that hadn't changed. For the crew, it was the end of a routine flight. For Alani, it was the beginning of a reckoning. When the jet bridge connected, the cabin door didn't open to a stream of departing passengers. It opened to reveal 2 stern-faced airline executives and a security detail. The lead attendant, Karen, stepped forward with a confused smile, ready to give her report. But she was met with a cold, formal silence. One by one, the entire cabin crew was called forward and handed a thick envelope. Their smiles faltered, turning to disbelief, then to panic, as they realized they weren't being praised, they were being fired. Effective immediately, Alani Ross watched not with triumph, but with a heavy, somber dignity. She gathered her things and walked off the plane, her stained blouse a silent testament to the ugliness she had endured. Her husband was waiting for her, his embrace a shield against the world. There was no celebration in this victory, only a profound sadness. Because this story isn't really about the satisfaction of a billionaire's revenge. It's about the silent indignities that people of color endure every single day. Indignities that don't come with a powerful husband waiting on the other side of a text message. This was a rare case where prejudice met power, and power won. But it leaves us with a haunting question. What happens when the victim isn't a surgeon married to the owner of the airline? What happens when she's a teacher, a student, or a single mother who has no one to call? How many thousands of these stories happen every day at 30,000 feet, in grocery stores and on city streets, where the injustice is just as real, but the consequences never arrive?